Hello everyone, welcome to Psychology 303, Analysis of Everyday Behavior. And today we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about self-management. So we've talked about how we observe, how we record behavior. We've kind of alluded to the fact that there are a lot of different interventions that we can use, different techniques that we can utilize. And some of these we can do on our own. We possibly don't need other people to help us actually change our behavior in some way. So say, for example, we have the goal of exercising or running more regularly. Let's focus on running, because I'm sure that's a goal that many of us have. What might we do to try and run more regularly, to try and run more frequently? Well, there are a lot of different things that we can do. We can set goals. We can set very specific goals, maybe short-term goals, such as maybe running 3 times a week, long-term goals, such as maybe running at least 5 days a week, or maybe even running every day. We can put a chart on our wall that kind of tells us how many miles we've run per day, per week, how many days of the week we run. We kind of make a recording. That way it kind of helps us motivate a little bit. Maybe we just simply have a chart where we actually write down how many miles we've run, how long it took us to run, a location that we ran, simply making sure that we record everything. Maybe we ask our friends to help out. Maybe we say, hey, I want to run. Do you want to run with me at the same time? Using kind of social support to help us get through this. Or maybe we focus on maybe some of the reasons why we don't run in the first place. Maybe instead of running after work, we get really hungry. So making sure that we have a snack in the late afternoon, so that way when we get home, we aren't hungry and therefore are more likely to run. So there are many different strategies that we can use, techniques that we can use. And oftentimes, if we use them all together, we have a much higher likelihood of following through and actually changing our behaviors. So within those examples, I identified 2 different types of behaviors. I identified controlling behaviors. These are the things that we do that can help us change the target behavior. And then I identified the controlled behavior. This is the target behavior. This is the behavior that we're wanting to modify. So an example of where we would eat a snack in the late afternoon, that would be a controlling behavior, and our controlled behavior would be running. That our controlling behavior of eating a snack would allow us to change our controlled behavior at a later point. So different behaviors, again, we like to talk about behaviors, but it's not always about the target behavior. We can utilize other behaviors that kind of have a domino effect that allow us to change different behaviors. So we've talked a little bit about increasing and decreasing behaviors. There are specific terms that we often use. So a behavioral deficit is something that we don't do enough that we want to increase. So it could be increasing the frequency of behavior, the current duration of behavior. Normally when we set a goal, we want to achieve a desired positive outcome in the future that's related to that behavior. So running more often would put us in better physical shape, make us healthier, make us live longer. We can also have behavioral excesses. That's something that we do too much that we want to cut down on, that we want to stop. Ideally, our goal would be to decrease the level, frequency, duration of that specific behavior, and ultimately avoid the undesirable negative consequences that are associated with that behavior. So if I want to cut down on fatty foods or sugary drinks, that's going to help me, similar to increasing exercise, live a longer, healthier life. So part of self-management is setting goals and kind of using self-monitoring or watching, keeping track of your own behavior to see if you're making progress towards that goal. So it's very important to establish a specific goal, identify a specific target behavior. So rather than just saying, I want to run more, you would say, I want to run 3 times a week, or I want to run for 4 total hours every week. Again, being very specific. And you can set an initial goal that is attainable and then shift to maybe what you have as your ultimate goal, running 5-6 days a week for a certain period of time. There can be some kind of progression there. So goal setting and self-monitoring is one strategy. We can also use antecedent manipulation. That's modifying our environment or focusing on aspects of our life that will lead to an increase or decrease in the likelihood of the behavior occurring. So again, using post-it notes, putting them up on the wall, it could be an example of antecedent manipulation. Having that snack in the afternoon can help you put yourself in a better situation to be able to run later. Really, any technique that we use in self-management is an antecedent manipulation. Going to modify our environment that's going to lead to an increase or a decrease in that specific behavior occurring. Rather than manipulating the antecedent, we can also manipulate the consequence. We can arrange for reinforcers or punishers to occur every time we do or don't perform that behavior. If we want to use self-management, that really needs to be self-contained, that we don't want to rely on other people to deliver the consequence. We need to focus on ourselves. So we might tell ourselves, all right, every time I exercise, I get to watch an hour of Netflix later. Or every time I don't exercise, I have to force myself to eat a plate full of veggies. So those would be examples of reinforcers and punishers, respectively. One thing that can occur is what's known as short-circuiting. That would be when maybe you don't follow through on the behavior, you don't run, but you end up giving yourself the reward anyway, or you don't give yourself the punishment that you were supposed to. Kind of circumventing the agreement that you've kind of made with yourself. So that's especially more likely to occur in self-management when you don't have someone else that's kind of holding you by the hand and delivering these reinforcers or punishers, depending on whether or not you perform the behavior. You can kind of have this reinforcer and punisher system set up in your own head, but you can also write it down in what's known as a behavioral contract. It's a written document that identifies not only the target behavior, but also the consequences that should accompany the presence or absence of the behavior. So again, if you exercise, if you follow through, you get Netflix. If you don't, you're forced to eat veggies. This is all written out in a document. And sometimes, yes, this is self-management, but we can use other people to help us kind of follow through with this contract, often applying these consequences. So therefore, short-circuiting is less likely to occur, but at the same time, you need to find someone who is willing to follow through with these consequences, especially punishment. So sometimes good friends aren't always the people you want to choose. Sometimes good friends are the people that are going to be more likely to deliver that punishment as a way of getting to you. But choose the person wisely to kind of be able to deliver that contract. Then we'll talk a little bit about contracts in the next video. On the long similar lines, yes, we're talking about self-management, but we can also utilize social support. Kind of performing these behaviors with other people. Sometimes just being with these people can provide a cue in itself, again, a form of antecedent manipulation that will lead to a higher or lower likelihood of that behavior occurring. So if you form a running group or maybe a study group, when you see those people, subsequently, you may be more likely to run or study because it provides this kind of cue or context. And again, they can also hold you accountable and prevent short-circuiting from occurring. And lastly, we can use techniques known as self-instructions and self-praise. Self-instructions are little tools that you can kind of use to talk to yourself and kind of walk yourself through exactly what you need to do. So we've all used self-instructions in one way, shape, or form. Maybe if we have a specific intervention that we need to kind of follow through with, we recite the steps in our head. If we want to get motivated to run, we say, all right, let's put our running gear on. All right, let's put our running shoes on. All right, let's make a shake. That way when I get home, I can drink the shake. Kind of following through all the techniques that you want to utilize, but telling yourself how to behave as a way of kind of motivating yourself to do so. After you perform the behavior, you can use self-praise. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself credit for the behavior and kind of feel good about what you've accomplished. So that's all I have for today. That's all we're going to talk about in terms of self-management. Thank you all for your time and attention, and I will see you all in the next video.